And here we go, halfway mark through tearing apart the steps and everything. So this is actually step 6, and so it states we're entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. So basically, defects of character. Again, we turn to an invisible Sky Daddy, a non-existent Sky Daddy, that hey, remove all my defects of character and everything. So the thing is, we all have strengths, we all have weaknesses. So you're basically telling someone to get rid of all your weaknesses. So for instance, for me, oh hey, look, remove my social communication disorder. I pray to you, all powerful Sky Daddy that doesn't exist, to remove all all those defects and everything. So again, you're seeing how I've stated in previous videos, we need to get religion out of mental health and everything. And so here it is, you're turning over stuff to some non-existent entity that does not exist and it can't be proven to exist, to remove defects of character and everything. So basically, you're setting yourself up to become, in other words, a slave to the cult of AA, as my cat is demanding attention. So don't go to AA. Yes, you tell them. This is why I always say get into things like smart recovery, because it puts you in the driver's seat. Oh hey, look, here it is. When it comes to your substance abuse, there's really no necessarily outside help now coming from some invisible Sky Daddy that doesn't exist. Now, if you were to instead replace that with professional help, someone who is actually qualified, like a psychologist, a therapist, a counselor, who actually has a education in psychology and can point you in the right direction, be like, hey, look, these are the behaviors, these are the thought patterns, this is kind of the routine you want to get into to have success in overcoming your substance abuse. With step 6, it's basically setting yourself up to become a slave to God and to basically the AA cult religion, because you need to put yourself under the direct control of God, and it gets into the sense of what usually is reiterated inside the AA organization and inside their meetings and rooms, and one of two ways. Hey, look, if you don't do this, the only other option are jails, institutions, or death. Or, yeah, if you don't do this, you're going to end up drinking again. So, now, do they come outright and say this is what's going to happen? They heavily imply that, look, if you don't do this program, that's what's going to happen. So, when you're someone who is first coming off of your drug and or alcohol abuse, you're very susceptible to things oh hey, I need to do this, otherwise I'm going to drink again. That's not the case. What you need to do is set yourself up for success by getting your habits and behaviors in control. Like I've stated in other videos, you drive down one road and you pass by the bar that you always go to get drunk and everything. Take a different road, where that way you bypass the bar, so you don't set yourself up oh hey, look, there's Jim Beam's bar that I always go to drink at, where I get smashed off Jim Beam. Instead, like I said, instead of going down this road, I take a right and then take one of the side roads and I completely miss good old Jim Beam's bar and everything, where I always get drunk and everything. That's how you change a habit and a behavior to set yourself up for success, instead of driving past keeping your habit and behavior the same and driving by Jim Beam bar and praying to God oh Lordy, please let me don't drink and everything, and so it pretty much states that you are not in the driver's seat. You have to in essence, that character of defect that sits there and has you drive by Jim Beam bar and everything, you have to pray to God that hey, you need to remove that, instead of realizing, oh hey, look, like I said, if I just go down this side street and then take a right and then take a left on like the next street over, I completely bypass the bar. I don't get triggered, and therefore I can I'm changing my habit and behaviors to be able to bypass something. And so by getting back to getting into professional help, oh hey look, they're going to offer you like solutions to your problem. They're not just going to say, oh you better pray about it, like oh turn your like a will over to God and everything. They're not going to give you some wishy-washy bullshit that's not going to necessarily work for you. So, and I always say, like, look, if you want to find religion and spirituality after the fact, that's completely fine and everything. Make sure though, like, you get a clear head and you can think clearly, but that's not how you go about mental health. How you go about mental health is not having God will have God remove all these characters of defects. What you need to do is, with professional help, work on changing your behaviors and your habits and get into like the stuff like that you find in Smart Recovery, where you work on yourself to improve yourself. Because this step is basically setting yourself up, like I keep reiterating, you set yourself up, become a slave to the organization, because as you'll see in the later steps and everything, you now have to start turning around and start recruiting other people into this. And like, oh, hey, look, I need to like give this away and everything. Hey, we're talking about some serious stuff here. Yes, and you're demanding attention. So, hey, wait a second. Here's my God as I understand him, like my higher power. Hey, you think if I pray to you that you'll relieve all my like defects of character and everything? Oh, wait, no, you just want to eat, sleep, and shit. Yep. So that gets into like the whole idea of like the God of your understanding, and have him remove like the defects of your character. It can be like a doorknob, like a book, a cat, anything like you want and everything. And of course, as soon as that doesn't work, and you lo and behold, like I used the example of going by Jim Beam Bar, where you get drunk and everything and you pray to your higher power. Oh wait, that didn't fucking work. Oh right, because like that makes sense now, because you didn't change the behavior and habit of, instead of keep going straight and past Jim Beam Bar and praying to your higher power. Oh, that didn't fucking work. Changing your behavior and your pattern, where you take a right down the side street and then take a left and keep going in the same direction home, completely bypass Jim Beam Bar. Hey, look, it actually worked. And you know that side street doesn't even have liquor stores, doesn't even have like convenience stores that sell like alcohol in the form of beer or whatever. Oh, there we go. And that's why, instead of praying to God to remove our character defects or whatever, you got to realize that like, hey, look, some of our like faults and our defects or like our weaknesses are part of what we are as humans. So we need to recognize those stuff and be able to, again, with a professional, they're going to help point these out, like, hey, give you ideas, like, hey, look, instead of doing like X, Y, and Z, do A, B, and C instead, to see if that actually works. Okay, maybe you try A, B, and C, and then like B and C don't work, but A does. Oh, okay, I'm going to stick with A because that worked. And then maybe further down the line, you try out D, E, and F, and like you find 2 of those 3 don't work. Kind of like good old trial and error, where you find stuff that actually works. So I tried like with these steps, like showcase like the progression as you work through the steps, like the first 3 steps, like I've stated. It sets you up to be completely powerless, completely hopeless, and completely worthless. So by the time you get to this, you're completely willing to give yourself over to become a complete and utter fucking slave to the God of your understanding, or in essence, the God of the AA program and the AA organization itself and everything. So now you can see you're pretty much in the thicket of it. And so if you don't get out of the underneath the umbrella of this organization, you're going to set yourself up for future failure. And like as soon as like you do have like that failure, you relapse, you're going to pretty much be looked down upon when you do relapse, because like it's all about like a time. So these steps set you up for that failure and everything. So that's why I always say, like, with all the other videos I've done on the programs like Smart Recovery, Rational Recoveries, Phoenix Program, all those are going to serve you so much better, because you're going to be able to move on with your life, instead of like when you get to this point with step 6, like I'll reiterate, you've set yourself up to become a slave to this invisible sky daddy that doesn't exist, and the AA organization. And as we'll see in future steps, you pretty much have to start like recruiting. So misery loves company. So like you realize you've set yourself up for failure and to be completely dependent on the organization by this step and everything, instead of like being completely independent and being able to move on with your life like the other programs that I have mentioned. As yes, my cat wants attention and he wants to be the star of this show. Yes, we're talking about how to move on. So yeah, all you care about is getting attention. Anyway, so as like I've kind of stated here, like with this step, it pretty much now sets you up after you've completely admitted that, hey, look, you're completely powerless, you're completely hopeless, and you're completely worthless. You need this program. Now you're a slave. Whereas if you were to do other stuff, I'll use the example of you do a step per month. 6 months in, you're now on step 6, and you're now completely and utterly a slave of this organization. Whereas if you're doing 6 months of like smart recovery, you'd pretty much be well on your way of moving on with your life. Maybe like you started off with like 2 group sessions and like a one-on-one session with a therapist every week, and now by this point you're down to like maybe like one group like a week, and then maybe one one-on-one session every month and everything to kind of track your progress. So I don't know about you, but I'd rather have just like in 6 months be well on my way of putting my alcohol abuse behind me, and having gotten down to like one-on-one meeting with my therapist or counselor, and only one group meeting a week, versus like a lifetime of slavery towards the AA organization. So maybe I should turn around and it's like all hail the magic cat. Yeah, because the magic cat that will keep us away from our insanity and like our alcoholism, or being a complete junkie or whatever kind of terminology that they use to keep you down and everything. So your substance abuse does not define you. You can overcome it. Just don't get into this bullshit where, like I've stated a number of times, with this step, you now set yourself up to become a slave. This program, and get into the programs that I've mentioned, and move on with your life.